Welcome, Jonathan, to Wealth Matters podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Alpish.
It's awesome Friday, huh?
It certainly is.
That's
Certainly is.
perfect. Hey, Jonathan, can you tell us what's your primary job or business right now?
Well, I would say my job is a property manager. That is my job. And I have to say that our primary business right now is in our acquisitions and dispositions business is our niche is going to be buying houses subject to owner financing, and our disposition of those are going to be rent with option to buy, and sell with owner financing. That is primarily our major focus right now.
That's awesome. So, how and when did you start in real estate?
Oh gosh, graduated high school June of '85.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
but I was in real estate probably from the day that I was born. Kind of grew up in the industry.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
Early age, Pish, I remember asking my parents what abstract title was. So
No way.
stuff of that. So I kind of grew up in the business. Mom and dad had their construction business, real estate brokerage
Oh,
firm.
nice. Oh, yes.
So I've
Perfect.
been around the industry all my life, but it kind of went on. I went on my own around August of 1985.
That's
So
amazing.
33, 34 years now.
So, do you remember your very first investment?
I certainly do. Certainly do
What
remember.
was it?
My first investment was actually, it was, and we can't do them now, was a similar of a subject to. It was kind of subject
Hmm.
to back then, but it was I actually just went in and assumed the mortgage. You could do that back then. It was a
Oh.
non-qualifying assumption, and you just walk into an
Oh.
FHA loan. Back then, I was paying about 12%,
Oh,
so
of course. Yeah.
which is kind of unheard of rates at
See,
this time.
it's funny when I speak with my friends and when I tell them, they're always asking, "Oh, should I refinance? Should I do this and that?" And I'm like, "Do you even know this is the lowest interest rate ever, and we may not see it again?" And I tell them it's usual. The historic is 10 to 12%, and they're like, "No way, no
Yeah.
chance." Come on.
Yeah. So that was probably my first one.
Interesting.
I think all in, I think was in it for about $3,500. And that was a house that I moved into.
Oh, nice.
So that was
So,
mine.
so you just mentioned subject to or sub to.
Mhm.
So, and I want to talk about that because that's the purpose of this podcast. What
Mhm.
exactly is that?
Well, in easy terms, I mean, certainly subject to can be, well, it's actually, it is an acquisitions type model. So that's what we're using in our business. So you can have subject to inspection, subject to, during that process of buying a property, that is a terminology on a contract. Well, we're taking it a little bit step further, and it's been used for many years,
Mm-hmm.
decades, for many years now, where we're talking about buying houses subject to the existing financing. It's basically we're asking the seller or the mortgagor to leave the debt in place while they pass ownership of the property to us. They
Interesting.
give us the deed and your payment book, and we'll take it over from there. That's it
I,
in
s-
its
I
easy.
s- So, what's in it for seller then? Why would someone want to do subject to?
Well, it's the ease of closing because sometimes they
Okay.
may not have enough equity. That
Right.
we've got equity investors that pay cash and rehab and so forth, but we
Mm-hmm.
have a good portion of the country that have bought properties within the last 3 to 4 years that may have obtained FHA, VA, some
I
high loan
see.
to value type loans. It is easier for
Right.
them to sell without coming out of pocket.
Got it. Okay, so when or when the downturn hits or something, right? When
Right,
people have to do short sale and whatnot, this
right,
is a good way to get out without affecting your credit, if you
exactly,
can.
exactly.
So, what are the advantages of doing sub two versus buying the property on cash or mortgage?
Well, first of all, you can do unlimited deals if you buy subject to.
Oh,
You know,
really?
it's really you're not with if you obtain financing, the bank will probably cut you off at a certain amount of time
Yeah, or
because
10 deals, 10
you know,
properties under Fannie Freddie, and you are done.
they'll look at what your debt service coverage
Right,
ratio is, and they say, oh, you're a risk, so we don't want you anymore. And
right.
you have to go down to Bank of B, Bank of C to be
Yep,
able to do those types of transactions. And unless you know or have a lot of family that love you, you're going to probably run out of money.
right.
So that's kind of a so the reason that I like doing subject to is I could buy nicer properties in nicer neighborhoods, and I could buy a lot more. And that's what I
Interesting.
like about it because I could buy properties that the equity investor won't touch.
Got
you know,
it.
with the equity player and the rehabber, the flipper. I don't have that type of competition in my market.
Got it. And do you focus on certain markets? How do you evaluate a market when you're looking for this kind of deals?
Well, I generally stay within a 5 to 10 to 15 mile area where I live. Uh, Certainly, I do a lot of joint ventures. That's
Yes.
how some of us have met
Yeah,
online
that's how
with
we
other
met.
people.
Yep. Yep.
And so I focus in those markets. I have this little thing that I call a geographic to demographic marketing study to kind of get an idea. But I focus on affordable housing, the median price range, plus or minus 20%. That is kind of like the sweet spot that I like to stay in. And
Got it.
but generally, the majority of the market is where I live, and also up in Michigan.
Got it.
No spot in Michigan that we do.
So what are some of the gotchas you will say while doing sub two as buyer, right? When you're trying to buy, some of the points you always keep in mind, or you tell some of the newbies like me?
Okay. Well, the big one, and I always get from somebody, especially on our group, they're in the subject to group, which we have about 17,000 people.
Oh, wow.
The big one is, what about the due on sale clause? You know, they're worried
They
about.
are always asking about this,
Yeah,
right?
they're always asking about this, and I kind of like saying, well, in 34 years in this business, I have
Yes.
never seen one called due,
Right.
and the ones that I've said that they did, I've asked for evidence, and the one that I did, they actually messed up. They weren't
Uh,
making the payments. Well, if you don't
yeah,
pay,
unless you make payments, why would they go after you, right? They
now,
have other fishes to go
yeah,
after, right?
now the thing of it is, LP, that is a concern, and it
Right.
should be a concern. You should
Yes.
always be worried about what someone else can do. So,
Right.
is it something that we just say, "Oh, put it in a box and don't worry about it"? No, it's always there. So, one of the biggest gotchas that I believe that's in this business as a newbie that's getting in this is to immediately build up reserves on every single property that you buy.
Oh,
Based on your disposition model. So if your disposition is rental, you should have a month to 2 month reserves until you get the property re-rented.
right. Yeah.
If your
Always.
if your disposition is owner financing, like us, we try to maintain 6 months
Oh,
reserves on every
nice.
single property,
Nice.
because we know if we have to go through a judicial foreclosure,
Yeah.
it's going to take us a while to get the property back. Minimum, we can't start the process for 3 months.
Right. That's
So,
correct.
so we want to be able to
Cash reserves.
build up those cash reserves. So to me, that is one of the biggest gotchas. And also the number one is to be sure you dot your I's and cross your T's, protect yourself in the deal, protect the seller in the deal, and be sure that you made a deal. Don't
Right.
go out there just because somebody wants to give you a house does not mean that you should buy it. Does not mean that you should
That's
take
a
it.
good point.
Yeah, I mean,
Because you have to make sure that it's a win situation for you.
for everybody,
Right.
the
Yeah.
buyer, the seller,
Right.
and the way that you're going to dispose of the property, your disposition. So certainly that's going to be your plan, shall I say.
Okay. And what do you think about having a plan, as you said, like unless you are a rental person or you are an owner financing, having the plan for that particular property, what you are going to do with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as a seller, let's say some of my listeners may be thinking about this as well. As a seller, what should I keep in mind while doing sub two, right? Because seller would be worried that, oh, the buyer would stop paying, right? Then what happens? Or the
Well,
investor stops paying.
well,
That does it affect their credit?
well, it certainly does. If I don't make the payment, obviously it's going to report against their credit report. And if I don't make the payment at all, they stand a chance of losing the property
Right.
to a foreclosure, whether if you're in a deed of trust state or in a judicial state like a foreclosure, like a mortgage. So there's that chance. The whole idea is whenever you are approaching a seller with that as somebody that you have identified would be a good subject to candidate, they need to be in a position that they need to sell, not want to sell.
Want to sell.
If they are a want to sell, you do not need to be in that living room talking to them about
Right.
subject to. The market can take care of them, and as an ethical investor, you should be able to refer them to your referral partners for them to be able to take care of that
Yeah.
process. But if they are in a need to sell, part of your discussion with them is to show how you can solve their problem by allowing them to sell you on the idea of taking over their mortgage payments. You can make the offer, but you must be able to allow them to make the decision for them to be able to cross that bridge. They're always going to be afraid. I like to show the fact that, we have a trust account where we maintain 6 months worth of reserves on every property. And they say, well, it's not good enough. I will, I haven't done it yet, but I will set up a savings account with that person at a local bank for 12 months.
Interesting.
And I will put 2 to 3 months in there. And at the end of 12 months, we're closing that because I'm getting my money back because I've already proven myself. So I will go that far. If I can't cross that bridge, I'm in the wrong living room and I'm going to go buy another house.
Right. So my next question is like extension of this question. How do you make sellers comfortable with subject to, right? So you kind of answered, but where do you start? What kind of techniques do you use while you're communicating with them?
Well, the first thing that we do is the sales process start with us is how do they find us? So if it was a referral, I've already been set up to be able to solve their problem, because my referral partner has already set me up as the guy to go see them.
Correct.
If it's a marketing piece, they've already been predisposed to be able to pick up the phone and call and just learn a little bit more about us. And what we do is we take information from them, building rapport, telling them that, the situation is not uncommon. We're able to help you in this situation. And then we kind of walk them through. Once we get into their living room, I actually have a sales presentation that I go through, little flip chart where they're able to see us on an online video presentation that we do. And I walk them through the idea of what it's going to cost us to sell their house. And I show them our numbers. Another investor won't do that. The equity investor won't say, hey, I want to make $50,000 on your property.
Why would they?
And I'm okay with that. I'll show them exactly what I'm going to make and how I'm going to make it. And ultimately it is their decision. So I think that having that trust up front with them, showing them our entire business model is being totally transparent, just breaks down those barriers.
Awesome.
Because I mean, yourself, 30 minutes online, you can read the bio of anybody in this country.
Right. No, everything's online. Yep.
Right. So why hide the fact? Why hide the fact and just be totally transparent with people?
That's awesome. So let's take a quick break and we'll be back after the break.
Okay.
Welcome back to Wealth Matters Podcast. I'm chatting with Jonathan Rexford, the guru of subject to and owner financing. So Jonathan, we were talking about how you talk to seller, how you reach out to them and how to make them comfortable. And I know you have been doing this for 30 plus years, 35 years or so. So what were some of the mistakes you made before you started doing subject to?
Oh, gosh. I've made plenty of them. And let me sit here and think about it.
And everyone does, right? As long as we learn from those.
I guess probably the number one mistake, and this is going to be a very broad spectrum, is probably the inner game, because sometimes, the inner game between our ears and so forth, the games that we play with ourselves and so forth. The number one mistake that I think that I've made is at several times in my real estate career is I thought that I was invincible. Market fluctuations don't matter to me. I've got this, I'm not going to say the Trump effect, but I've got it covered. I've got this, it's kind of the famous words of somebody that has an addictive personality that I've got this covered, that kind of stuff. So I would say that's probably the number one mistake is at times during market situations, market fluctuations, that I've had those issues is that I'm making stupid decisions in buying. And the number two mistake I would think was going to banks, signing personally for debt. Fortunately for the last 15 years, I've not been to a bank.
Really?
To be able to buy properties. Yeah. And I don't sign personally for debt anymore. I found out that those people are in it for themselves.
Yes.
And obviously are. I mean, they have shareholders and depositors that they need to, need to
Yep.
pay money to. But I just decided that this time I call it my third life because it is. And by the way, I hope it's not every 10 years that I do this and I'm born again within real estate. But it just seems like the third time around I might get things right.
Yeah,
And
third time's lucky.
yeah, because this cat does not have 9 lives. So, I think those are probably two of the biggest mistakes that I've made over my lifetime. Some that I've gone in with subject to by not verifying all assumptions, early on, not getting the full title report that I probably needed and verify the assumptions I
Right.
was making, because that's what we do in subject to. We
Yeah.
verify assumptions and we are assuming that
Right.
things are right. So, we've gone down those
Yeah,
roads.
you want to make sure it's a clean title. Right. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
And
the
also
key.
the seller that you're working with. If they're going through a personal issue, that personal issue can come into your deal.
That is true.
And so you need to verify those assumptions. Many deals I've walked away from where I'm like, this is just too much drama for me. And they would have a big, $700, $800 a month cash flow and a 6-figure back end. And I'm like, I'd just rather walk.
All right.
Money's not everything.
So that's awesome. So can you share some numbers from your worst deal as well as your best deal you have done on subject to?
Well, probably going to say this in a different way. My worst deal, everybody remembers it. I play that tape in my head every so often whenever I'm thinking about a deal. But probably instead of talking about the numbers on my best deal, I want to talk to you about my most memorable deal because it was still a good deal. I mean, it still is a 6-figure deal.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
We had this property that we bought probably about 10, 12 years ago. We bought it subject to for about $75,000. And I remember it had a PITI, that is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, of about $820 per month. And, wife and I decided that we were just going to rent this property out. It was not too far from where we live. And we thought that, might be something that we might hand down to one of our adult children whenever they got older, that they would be close by. Well, we rented it out to this family, husband, wife, and they had a little munchkin at that time. He was going to fireman school, wanted to be a fireman, and his wife was a nurse and that kind of stuff. And they moved in as a tenant. And, we just we didn't adopt the family, but they were young and they were starting out and they were real go-getters. They were just out there working constantly and so forth. And then over the years, the family grew. And I said, well, how'd you like to buy the house? Because I can tell at that time, my daughter wasn't going to stay in the area. And so I said, why don't you buy the house? I said, I'll help you buy it. I said, we'll be the bank. And again, we're paying subject to and so forth. So they bought the property. I'm sorry, they lease optioned the property. It's a big difference.
Yeah.
So, we took a little bit of option consideration and they went ahead and they put an addition onto the house, painted it, fenced it in.
Wow.
They brought 4-wheelers in there. They were the weekend people that like to have fun on their 4-wheelers. 2 kids later, they're there and so forth. And I said, you know what? Why don't you just buy the house from me? I'll be the bank. And so they did. We got 8.5% on the note, and they were paying us for a while. And I just love that memory because here it was, and it's kind of what we're doing today. We're working more in affordable housing provider, and this was the basic model that we were doing 10, 15 years ago. We just didn't know it. We were able to help a young family through and we watched them grow. I see him at Publix. Publix is just down the street from us, and we'd see them, and I'd talk to them and so forth. I really, really loved this family. He went to paramedic school.
Nice.
She got her master's in nursing. I just watched this family grow and so forth. Well, he came to me one time and said, well, you got to refinance the house. And 8.5, 3.15.
Right.
I
can't beat it. Right.
The business side of me was just like, man, I'm going to hate this deal. But over a 7-year period, we probably made about $125,000.
Nice.
Between the pay down of my subject to note, the cash flow, and the back end, and so forth. But the most important part is we've taken somebody from a renter to a rent with option to buy to an owner finance to ultimately cashed us out. And that was probably the most success. We've had many of them since then. I've done that, but we've watched this whole model go through.
Right.
and have the success rate. Now, my most worst deal that I've ever done, the worst deal that I've ever done, Alpesh, is one that was in my memory. And this is one of these virtual deals. Everybody's wanting to be that virtual real estate
Yeah, and we
investor.
spoke
So,
about it, right?
yeah,
Because I'm in San Francisco Bay Area, and we thought it
yeah,
won't work out.
yeah. Well, I'm not that guy. I think I told you
Yeah.
that. I said I'm not
Yes.
that guy. But my most memorable one is I had an acquisitions manager located a property on the other side of the state, St.
Hmm.
Petersburg, Florida.
Yeah.
And this property was a 2-story colonial, probably built in the early 20s. I guess they call
Wow.
those
Okay.
colonials.
Yeah.
Uh,
Colonials. Yep.
Pictures were beautiful. Sanded hardwood floors, big old 4-foot open staircase. The pictures look wonderful. The numbers look great too on paper. Back then we didn't have the online uh, comp type services.
Right.
We used to get this disc from you used to get this, actually no, it was 3.5-inch floppy that kind of tells you how far we were dated.
Yes.
And we'd stick it in our hard drive there, and we'd run this thing on what we call Win2 data, and the numbers were great. I mean, had like $100,000 of equity. Talked to the guy, numbers worked out great, and so forth. I said, well, I'll just buy it. Again, this is one of my invincible years.
Right.
So,
Yes.
so what I did was I bought this property subject to, and we were going to sell it on a lease option, $100,000 minimum, $100,000 in equity. So my deal with this guy was I was to bring his loan payment because he was in pre-foreclosure. Think about I think it was about $7,000 or $8,000. He had a Home Depot card, wanted it paid off, because said he
Ah.
did some renovation on this one. So that was about $8,000. So I'm in at how much? About 15,000 by now. And so we did that, stroked the check, everything's fine. Notary, got it closing, recorded the deed. I'm sorry. And so 1 month goes by, 2 months go by, no calls. And I'm talking to my acquisitions manager. I said, you come up here. He was in West Palm at the time. So you come up here, stay the night, and we'll ride over. So by the way, this is a 3-4 hour drive over from where I'm
Okay.
at. So we jump in a truck, and I bring some tools with me just in case. And we drive over there. We come off the interstate, and I'm seeing this is probably about 8 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know if you've ever been in those neighborhoods where neighborhoods wake up. It's one of those neighborhoods that might be a C and D type neighborhood
Right.
where the neighborhood's starting to walk up. You have the guy, the hobo walking with the jug.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where I'm at, right?
Oh, wow.
And I look over at him and I say some words that I don't really cuss
Shouldn't
a
be on
lot.
the podcast.
Yeah. I say some of those words to him, and he's like, well, the numbers look great. And I'm like, I look at him really crazy like, and we get off the interstate there, and I'm right there. This house is right in the middle of 2 10-unit buildings.
Oh.
Understand, we didn't have Google Maps.
Right. This was a long time ago. Yep.
Yeah. So this is the worst deal. So I'm like, okay, all right, we see what we have. So we kind of clean up the yard and so forth, and I lower the price of the house and trying to get some action. No action at all. No action at all. So we go back home. I mean, we go back over there a couple more times, and I just said, you know what, I need to go over and find out what's going on.
Right.
So I make another trip over. Again, house grass is high. I called the lawn guy and chew him out, and I head back home. Well, then all of a sudden I get a call from one of the property manager of the units next door. And he said, by the way, he said the fire department was there. And I'm like, uh-oh. Come to find out, we had a fire. Well, this house had an apartment, had a mother-in-law apartment in the back, and it caught fire and so forth. So I said, man, I got to rehab this property.
Yeah.
So I put another, we're like 6-8 months into house payments of about $1,200
already, yeah.
So, carrying this on, I've paid off the Home Depot bill. Now I got to rehab this apartment because it smells like smoke.
That's a big one.
So I drop another $25,000, $30,000 because someone did not put insurance on this property.
Oh my God.
So again, mistake number one, did not dot our I's and cross our T's.
Cross the T's, yeah.
So which kind of was funny. I never wondered why the lender never put forced place insurance after
Yeah,
after all that
usually
time.
lenders will.
Yeah, they were like that. Maybe they didn't want the house either. Maybe they knew something I
Yeah,
didn't
or
know.
at that time, that's how they were,
Yeah.
right?
So we did that, and it was final payment. So I said, well, I need to come over and take a look at the property before I stroke the check for $7,000 to pay you off. So I shoot back over there, walked through, did a great job. Did a great job on the property. And I'm raking up the front yard because we have some leaves and so forth. And lo and behold, this prostitute walks up off the street
Ooh.
from where I'm at. And I got propositioned. And I said, get the you know what out of here.
Right.
And I turned around, I grabbed my rake, I left a lockbox in there, I put my key in it, I locked it up, I called my acquisitions manager, I said, we're done. I hauled
My
all the way
God.
back to Vero. I prepared a deed with the seller's name on it. I wrote a check for 2 months. I recorded the deed. I called the seller up and I said, here's the thing. I've made up your back payments. I have remodeled your property. I've paid off your Home Depot bill. And I've paid 2 months in advance. I said, I'm done with this property.
Why?
And I walked away.
Wow.
That is the
Wow.
worst deal.
Right.
I call it the whorehouse that took me down.
Oh.
And I'm sure we can say that. But
Yeah,
that's my most memorable,
that's crazy.
you know.
That's crazy. But now you learn from all those mistakes, and I know you are teaching others. So can you talk
Yeah.
about that? The 20K Club members.
Yeah.
What's it's about?
Well, 20K Club was a brainchild that I started. Well, it was something that we started because we have 168 hours in a week.
Right.
And with Subject to group, we have 17,000 people, and I love helping people. You know, if I could save people those mistakes, I feel like that I'm doing something because money's not everything.
Right.
Money, quality of life is everything that I like to do.
Quality of
So,
life.
with the 20K Club, I said, why don't we just put people in a, you know, I was doing some one-on-one coaching with people, and it really took a little bit of time and that kind of stuff. And a lot of people that could afford to pay for that time, they weren't really getting the full benefit. I felt
Right.
like, you know what, there's this friction, and I don't like friction at all. So I said, why don't we do something that is affordable to the masses, and I can still give good content for what we do as Subject to owner financing lease option, and be able to provide people a stepping stone to get out and get started. So that's what we did. We started the 20K Club members group, and what we're doing is it's $20 a month. There's no contract. I've got
Right.
entire workshops that we've done on
Mm-hmm.
Subject to lease option and owner financing and marketing and sales to kind of take a beginning investor and walk them through.
Yep.
You know,
And
and
I was part of that group for
yeah,
about 3-4 months as well.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
I
So
know the value that group brings. Yep.
yeah, and what we do is I get on meetings like this. You know, we do the Zoom meeting twice a
Yep.
week. You know, we answer questions and we work through deals and find out some of the inner game stuff because real estate's easy. It's just hard. You know, and I
Right.
know people say that, but you know, you got to fix what's up here between the ears first and be able to cross that bridge. And so that's what we started was a 20K Club, and because I believe the average person in real estate can make $20,000 per month. I mean, $200,000
That would
deal,
be amazing.
$200,000 deal, 10% down is how much? 20 grand.
20 grand.
So
That's amazing.
that was the brainchild behind it all.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So how can my listeners reach out to you?
Well, the Facebook is the best place.
Right. That's how I found you.
Just type in Subject to, and I'll come up. You can email me at johnrexford@gmail.com. That's another way to do it. You can just Google my name and you'll see my phone number and this ugly
Yes.
mug pop up. So I take all my calls.
Yes, you do.
You know, if I can't take it, I will tell you that I will call you back, and I will the same day normally. And so I'm here to reach out. Facebook is the best way to get a hold of me, or just give me a call. I'm just here to try to pass on good knowledge that people can implement, and that's the biggest thing right there.
Thank you so much. This was amazing.
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's
Take
always fun.
care and let's
Take
keep
care.
in touch.
All right. Same here. Bye bye now.
Bye.